Alright, welcome back guys. So in this video we're now going to move on to chapter 6. So this is the last chapter. We're going to be mainly talking about the body, the way the body affects the subconscious. Next chapter we'll go back to really getting more into, start setting things up about how to control the subconscious mind. So at that point we'll talk more about the connection between intention and quantization. So, but in this chapter we're going to now talk about I just call it miscellaneous topics on the body. So these are just topics that didn't really fit in, like I think I said last video, into one central theme or idea. So I literally just called it miscellaneous topics. And so we're just going to talk about various different things that are still important to know. So the first topic is called the body in distress. So I don't think there's too much to cover, but again, it is important. So this is basically just the idea that when the body, so before I even get into it, so we talked about different ways or conditions in which the body charges or commands the subconscious. So one of those conditions was basically to help you make a certain decision in the heat of the moment from some change in the environment to increase your survival. So those are primal emotions. So those, you'll experience that as like a burst of emotion or burst of charge that comes from the body. Second, we talked about the ground state. So the ground state is the way your body's charging your subconscious all day, right? All the time, while basically the whole time you're awake, it's charging it at that state constantly. So it keeps it charged in the ground state. And that does have an emotional feeling too, by the way, which I don't think I mentioned in the last video. The emotional feeling is, think of it as the ambient way you feel pretty much the whole day. It's not super good, but it's generally not that bad. It can be bad, right, if something's wrong with the brain, right, if it's not doing something properly. And that's where depression and generalized anxiety disorder and different types of disorders come from, related to your mood. But in a healthy person, generally the emotion you feel from the ground state is like, it's not completely neutral. That's more how depression feels. So it is still positive. It's not like super positive, but it's like a little bit positive, right? But yeah, so those are the two different circumstances. So one is more, primal emotions is more in the heat of the moment. It's more of a burst of emotion in the heat of the moment. Very temporary, very short-lived burst that lasts for a couple of minutes and goes away. That was called the activation phase. For the ground state, it's very constant throughout the whole day. So now we're going to go to the next one, the next type of condition where your body influences your subconscious. So your body also will impact your subconscious or give it specific type of commands when it's in distress, right? So that one's different too. So when the body's in distress, when the body is distressed, it will suppress the negative mind's ability to charge the subconscious. This is done to encourage some behavior, just like primal emotion. So basically what that means is when the body is undercurring some type of stress on it, right? Some type of problem, some type of issue, right? It'll actually send a command to your subconscious to make it harder for your conscious mind to control it, to make it much harder for your conscious mind to charge it and tell it what to do. So it'll dampen, and I use that word here, it'll dampen your negative mind's ability to charge the subconscious. And that's basically done to really encourage you to do something, right? So when does that happen? Well, a good example is when you're sick, right? So when you're sick, the body will dampen charging from the negative mind. So when I talk about this example in the book, so a couple of years ago, right, when I was at my job, so I just started a job, and by this time, wow, I'm thinking about it now, time flies, man, that's crazy, right? But anyway, I woke up one day, right, so I was driving to work, and at that time, I was used to just charging emotion all day, right, and not all day, but like I was used to charging it, basically just put myself in a good mood. I used to do that all the time, right, and I used to feel so good, like emotionally it felt very good, because I was always in a good mood, and I just felt a lot of emotional joy. I'd pick different frequencies. I would usually listen to some song, right, in the morning on my way to work. I'd listen to some song, I'd pick a song and use it to charge my charge my subconscious at some frequency, but mainly for the purpose of feeling some emotion more powerfully, right? And we'll talk about that. Music basically acts like a lens. So it acts like a lens to help you focus on some frequency to help you charge it. We'll talk about that in the next chapter. But yeah, I would always use music to help me charge some emotion. That felt great. Like, that was a wonderful time, because I would just charge. I'd pick some positive emotion and just feel it very, very strongly and intensely. But what I noticed was that this morning that I was driving to work, I noticed something was off, right? Something didn't feel right. Because when I'm charging my subconscious, remember what I said in the earlier chapters, that when you get used to charging it, you're going to recognize the frequency. You're always going to recognize the frequency your subconscious is on. You just get used to it. And you're going to know what frequency it is down to like the shade. So if you have some frequency you would generally associate with a certain emotion, you're going to recognize when that frequency changes a little. You're going to notice it's almost like the shade of the emotion changes a little too. And so I'm charging it, and I notice this frequency's there that, like, I know I'm not charging, right? I know, and it's foreign to me. Like, I never charge that frequency, and I'm feeling it, and I'm like, well, I'm not, like, I know that I'm not charging it, right? And it's not coming from any music, but it's just stuck there, and it's not going anywhere. That was unusual to me. Never really felt that as of the time I've been charging. And so, so I was kept charging, but I kept feeling that feeling, and I'm like, and it didn't feel positive, right? It was a negative feeling in my subconscious, and you kind of know it based on how your subconscious is compelling you in the emotional transcendental ability, right? Because remember what I said, frequencies can be mixed. So some of the emotion I felt I knew was coming that I was charging, and some of it was just something else. And I'm like, because it was so constant, it felt like it was coming from my body. But at the same time, it also felt negative. So I'm like, but I recognized it a little bit. And I'm like, I think I'm sick. Like, you know what I mean? Because it was funny, because that's what the compulsion was kind of giving me, right? That's what I was perceiving on a subconscious level. In a certain sense, my subconscious was altered. My belief was affected in a way that my conscious mind just recognized as believing I'm sick, right? And so I'm like, now I didn't really have that many symptoms of sickness yet, though. So I was, I did have like kind of burning nostrils, right? The day before, I don't think I had that much that morning, though. But it didn't really hurt, though. It just was like a burning sensation. And I was really, really tired that morning. I was way more tired than normal. Now, during that time in my life, I was in my super workaholic phase, which that's kind of a long story. I was working between like 70 to 80 hours a week, maybe sometimes more. So I was always tired, but like I would still be able to bounce back and have a certain amount of energy when I slept. But this day that didn't happen, right? I was knocked out. I was so tired. It didn't seem right? This is not what normally happens after I get that much sleep. So those were the only symptoms I felt, but I still didn't really feel sick. But what's funny is that my subconscious, I felt something in my subconscious telling me that I was sick, because I pay attention to it. I charge it all the time, so I have to know what frequency it's on. And so I noticed it's like this charge within my frequency, within my subconscious, this frequency that feels like sickness. So I'm like, it was kind of confusing, but I'm like, whatever. So I just went to work, right? And I told them that I think I might have COVID. So this was when COVID was going around. And I was like, but I didn't really feel the symptoms yet. But I didn't want to go to work anyway and just, ignore it when I think I have COVID, because then I could pass it to other people. So I told them, and I was like, okay. So I left. They told me to go take a test. So I left, I took a test, and sure enough, I had COVID. So my body already knew, and it was already commanding my subconscious in a way to reflect that. It just hadn't charged very much up at that frequency yet. But I'm so sensitive and aware to what's going on in my subconscious that I'll pick up on it very quickly. So of course, right, I went home, and then these symptoms started coming in more and more and more and more. And of course, when they came in like crazy, I feel terrible, right? So I don't feel very good. I feel very tired and just like staying in the bed. I'm not emotionally high, but in that moment, if I would have tried to charge my subconscious, it would have been very difficult, right? So I wouldn't have had the same freedom to charge it. My subconscious wouldn't have responded as easily as it does when I'm not sick, right? So when you're sick, I mean, I don't have to, this is common knowledge, but when you're sick, obviously you're not in a good mood. Obviously it's harder to get in a good mood. It's harder to enjoy yourself, right? But what we're really saying is that it's harder to charge, for the conscious mind to charge energy. It's harder for it to charge some emotion. So that's going to knock out your transcendental creativity, transcendental control, transcendental belief, transcendental imagination, and emotion. So in other words, this is important to know. So when the body's distressed, you're just not going to have the same ability to charge your subconscious at the way you normally can. So now that's pretty obvious when you're sick, but I still wanted to say it here. But it can also occur at other times, which are important to know too. So when you're working like crazy, right? Let's just say you're a workaholic and you work all the time, right? That also causes your body will respond to too much work by becoming stressed. And we even talked a little bit about what stress is later in the chapter. But it'll, in this chapter, so it can respond by becoming stressed. And when it becomes stressed, it'll start sending commands to your subconscious, right? And that's why you generally feel bad when you work too much, because you're stressed out. It'll affect your emotions and the way your body, your physiological responses. But that effect will also suppress the conscious mind's ability to charge your subconscious. So you notice when someone's stressed or they work a lot, it's very difficult for them to feel a lot of emotion, right? It's difficult for them to feel emotionally good. When couples are in a relationship, I don't know how much this still happens, but I'm sure it still happens. I was going to say a lot, but anyway, I know it happens, right? When couples are in a relationship, when a guy is working like crazy, right? He's just a workaholic. He's working all the time, right? And he comes home and he just wants to relax. What does the chick want? What does the wife want a lot of times? She wants him to be more open, more romantic, to be more emotionally available, and this and that. But it's hard for him, right? It's hard, and I've been there before, right? It's not just hard because he's not putting in the effort. Oh, if you tried harder. No, the body is actually making it harder for the subconscious mind to charge from the conscious mind, right? So it's just going to be difficult to do that, right? Until the body stops doing that. The body will stop doing that when you stop putting so much stress on it. You need to relax more. Now, that's very difficult to do in the modern world. The modern world and society is not designed in a way to kind of make it easy for the conscious mind to charge the subconscious, irregardless of stress from the body, right? That's a long-winded way of saying that the society isn't designed to allow us to charge the subconscious freely. I just kind of reworded it, but you get what I'm trying to say. So a lot of times women, they don't understand that, right? So if a guy's working that hard, there's very little he's going to be able to do to feel much emotion and feel romantic and all of that while he's stressed, while he's working so hard. He's going to have to stop working for a chunk of time for that energy to discharge. We're going to talk a little bit more about how discharging and discharging works specifically when it comes from the body, but there is a version of that too. But he's just going to have to wait for it. And once it goes away, then it's going to be super easy for the conscious mind to charge it again, right? So that's important. Like if you work really hard, long hours, all of that, you're going to have a very hard time charging your subconscious. Like I used to experience that. When I first learned how to do this stuff, like I don't think I was working super hard yet at that time, so I would charge it at certain times. And I remember, like the first day that I started working I think I got 2 jobs, so I started working like crazy. Then I just started trying to charge it the way I normally do. And I was like, man, it's way harder, right, than normal. Because now I know what's going on with the subconscious. I know that my emotions, what I'm able to feel is related to the subconscious. I know the body's also affecting the subconscious. So it's like I didn't expect for it to be super easy when I'm tired, right? Because I expect it to be a little harder. But I didn't expect it to be that much harder. It was like way harder. So then I realized the body's actually dampening my ability to charge. I just have to wait until my body stops, right? It wasn't even worth doing because I could still charge it, but it was going to be mixed in with the dampening effect too, and the negative feelings coming from the body, and or they're not really negative. There's like stressful feelings coming from the body. It just wasn't worth it. I'm like, no, I'll just get sleep and, charge when I'm good again. And so, and that's kind of what I'm saying here too. So if you stay awake for too long, then your body will also release neurochemicals and hormones or whatever, and it'll also start commanding the subconscious in a specific way. In that case, you'll feel a compulsion to lie down and sleep, right? And that also gets in the way of charging from your mind. So if you're really tired, you're going to notice your performance capability drops, even for your negative mind, right? You're not going to be as creative. You're not going to be able to think as logically. Any type of transcendental form of control is not going to work as well. And you're not going to be able to charge any emotion you feel like as easily. Right? You just have to sleep, right? And then your body will stop doing that, right? So it'll stop getting in your way when you actually get sleep. So, in other words, it's encouraging the behavior of sleep. When you're sick, I should have said before, your body's encouraging you to rest, right? You can't get up and play video games or watch TV as easily. You just can't enjoy it because you can't charge emotion. So your body does that so you will rest, right? And then that way it heals. And when you're sick, when you're feeling better, it removes this block, and then your mind is free to charge again. What else? Oh, this last one. So this is pretty much, I think that's pretty much it that we'll talk about. So even when you're dieting, right? So when you're dieting, that's a rough one because your body responds to you dieting by commanding your subconscious to compel you to eat and want food, and it'll completely make it harder for you to have a fun time unless you obey it, right? Because according to the intelligence of the body, right, this is bad that you're not eating or something, or it has to eat away at its own fat. So it'll dampen your ability for the conscious mind to charge it, and it'll make you not really feel so good until you eat, and you'll feel a continuous compulsion to eat food. It'll seem super logical to you to eat food, and the compulsion will feel very strong, and even as you feel like you're getting closer to eating food, you'll feel better, right? And your body's doing that to encourage you to eat, right? But again, no matter how powerful that compulsion is, the negative mind can still resist it, right? So when you're dying, it's real tough, but you're going to have a hard time charging then too. Now, there are other probably other circumstances we could think of for the body in distress, maybe when you're injured or something too. But these are the main ones. I just wanted to talk about this. I think it pretty much brings the point home. But this is important. So when you're charging your subconscious in the future, just always keep in mind that if the body is distressed in some way, right? Like I said, either you're sick, you're too tired, you're working too hard, or you're dieting, right? It's going to make it way harder to charge your subconscious. When people, and I guess I should just mention it now, I was saying before, when people have anxiety or when they're depressed, like generalized anxiety disorder or when they have depression, something's happening with their ground state, right, where the body's constantly charging the subconscious in a way that's affecting their mood continuously. It's not supposed to be continuous. It's either supposed to be, in the case of primal emotions, for a very short time in response to something going on in the environment, or it's supposed to be when the body's in distress. So some longer circumstance than primal emotions, but still conditional, right? So it should go away after a while and you should go back to your ground state. When sometimes something goes wrong, then your ground state is charged your body is charging your subconscious at the ground state level in a way that's negatively impacting your mood. So then you're just going to feel it all day, right, while you're awake. And so that's a problem. Now the mind can still charge the subconscious in that case too, but it's much harder. So that's why people, when they're depressed, they just have a harder time experiencing emotion, right? They have a harder time feeling good. It's because their body's like dragging their subconscious frequency down and dampening their mind's ability to charge. When I had anxiety for my sleep apnea, like that was a crazy experience for me because I'd never experienced that before. I did know that it was hard to charge my subconscious when it was distressed, but I'd never had depression or anxiety. I didn't even know what that type of distress was like. And so when I did it, I found this same principle. Like I just could not charge my subconscious. I was used to, being in one of these conditions. So if I'm sick, okay, fine, I'll wait till I get better, right? Or if I'm tired, I'll sleep it off, and then I can charge normally again, right? right? If I'm staying awake too long, yeah, like say, or if I'm working really hard, okay, fine, I'll wait till I expect it to be hard, but when I'm able to take a break, relax, I know I can charge normally. When I had anxiety, it wasn't like that. There was no like light at the end of the tunnel. There was no thing I knew I had to do to get rid of it, right? To go back to charging normally. It was just day in and day out. I could not I could charge, but I couldn't charge anywhere near the way I normally could. So it was super hard to almost feel any emotion. Like that was crazy, right? But I did figure out how to solve that, which we'll talk about. But when a person takes pills to solve that type of problem, what they're actually doing is they're taking something to affect the way their brain or the way their body commands their subconscious. So now it's not commanding their subconscious in the ground state to dampen their emotions so much. And then that allows their mind the ability to charge it much more easily. The problem there's problems with that too. That's why it doesn't always work, right? To understand that, we'll have to get to the next section where I talk about how the subconscious affects the body. But yeah, for now, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But for now, like I said, when it happened to me, I understood all of this then, so I just used certain principles, and then I was able to get rid of it without the pills, right? Because there are problems, in my opinion, with taking pills. But like I said, I just want to make a disclaimer again. I'm not a medical scientist or whatever. If someone suffers from that, they should go to a physician. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it for this section. I forgot what the next section's about. Anyway, I'll look it up. So I'll look it up and see what we have for the next video. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you then.